Welcome to the One Advantage podcast, exploring the intersections of peer power, culture, and agility. Your hosts, Mike Richardson, Jason Richmond, and Leo Butari, co-founders of the One Advantage community of practice and advantage peer groups. For more information, please visit us at the One Advantage podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the One Advantage podcast. I'm here with my co-founders of the One Advantage community, Jason Richmond and Leo Butari. And we're going to do a deep dive today into the whole topic of culture. But usually before we do that, let's find out who's been up to what and where the heck everybody's been. Leo, you've been charging around the place again.
So the first part was good. It was 5 days in Las Barriles, Mexico, just getting a little rest. And then that ended fast when, as soon as I landed in San Diego, I had to take an overnight flight to Chicago and then on to Dallas, Tulsa, back home. And I leave for Ottawa on Sunday for a week. Yeah. So, big temperature difference between Las Barriles, Mexico, and where I'm going to Ottawa, Canada. That's for sure. Yeah,
this is all
pack a little differently for that one, but very excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to, my first trip back to Canada, was just about a month ago and hadn't been in over 2 years. Went to Montreal to Gilles Prepoint's group, and now spending a week in Ottawa will be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it.
All spreading the word about peer innovation, correct? You're talking
That's
to
right.
groups. Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
Great stuff. And Jason, what have you been up to?
Well, this couldn't be more timely, Mike. I'm finishing up today. I'm down in Texas and working with a client of ours that is going through a merger and acquisitions. And, they brought two different sets of leadership teams together. We've been spending the last 3 days down here in Texas. And I got to tell you, the culture conversation, the best culture conversations and some of the greatest progress has been outside of that boardroom, getting together with innovation and sharing ideas. And we've spent the last 3 days just working on really defining, what this new culture is going to be, and how are we going to break down old habits and silos. It's been an amazing 3 days. We're finishing up this afternoon, and then I'll be flying back to Colorado.
Awesome. Wow, it's cool. And I bet that's always interesting, bringing two cultures together, trying to make one, huh?
Yeah, it's dynamic. It really is. As long as you have the environment that has an element of psychological safety to it, and they know that, we can speak freely and share our ideas, and they're empowered to lead and influence. It gets really powerful.
All too often, unfortunately, and I'll speak to a conversation that I overheard when I was on the plane just a couple of days ago. This guy's on the phone just before we're about to take off, and he's part of a merger of these two companies coming together. And he said, "Yeah, I thought we were going to get in a room and talk about what do you do well, what do we do well, kind of bring it together." He says, "Nope, we get in the room. They said, we don't care what you do, we don't care how you do it. Here's how this is going to go." And that's going nowhere good. I mean, it was horrendous.
Oh boy!
But that's we all talk about this stuff, and I think for us, it's kind of natural. We have a natural way to think about this, but all too often it happens just like that guy was talking about on the phone, right?
Yeah.
How many times have we seen that?
You can't make that stuff up. It's real, everybody. Hey,
I've talking about airplanes. I was on my flight down to Dallas. I was just flipping through and preparing and looking at notes. As a matter of fact, I was reviewing my latest book, Culture Ignited, because I really wanted to pull some core concept out of that. And the gentleman sitting next to me, he just engaged me in this conversation, and it was a good hour-long conversation about what we do, what the One Advantage is, and what we do. And he asked me for my business card. I just ended up giving him the book.
Excellent.
But you never know where these culture conversations are going to pop up. Yeah. And what it tells me is that it's on everybody's mind.
It's a hot topic.
It touches everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, hey, I've had a busy week, as I was just sharing with you guys. I did a class run out of Australia. So my time, California, it was 4 nights in a row, from 6:30 p.m. till midnight. It was pretty brutal, but I'm glad I did it because I'm taking my game to the next level in being a certified chair of advisory boards. And for me, that's kind of the top line of everything. It's where culture, it's where peer power, it's where agility starts. So maybe we'll have a future episode dedicated to that conversation. But today's conversation is really a continuation of what we were just saying. We're going to focus on the whole topic of culture. And of course, as you just heard, if you're watching the video here, I got both of Jason's books here. The first one was Culture Spark, that was written in 2019. The subtitle is 5 Steps to Ignite and Sustain Organizational Growth. And then in 2021, quickly followed up with another great book, Culture Ignited, the 5 Disciplines for Adaptive Leadership. So we have the right guy right here to talk about everything culture. But before we dive in, Jason, this has been your lifelong quest. You've always been a culture strategist in some way, shape, or form. You've just published 2 great books in quick succession. You know, where has all of this brought you to in terms of how you now think about culture?
I am more convinced, more determined, and more excited about it because we need it now more than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In the world we live in, what's going on in prioritization of employees and key talent, the conversations you have, even on a global stage, the influx of culture and organizational change and doing that in an appropriate way. Like Leo, I can't stress enough that I believe in an organization, in any type of organizational structure, culture is the way, the differentiator and the way that people stay connected.
Yeah.
And we have gone through the last 2-3 years, you know, the business climate, the business environment, where they are, we have gone through so much drastic change. And I think that's a big gap in our world, is that we have lost connection. And I think culture's the answer to bring it back.
Yep. Yeah. What do you think, Leo? What would you add to that?
You know, just I think about it in the context of peers, right? And you think about or just the people who surround us in general when we think about culture. And they do one of 3 things. They either hold us back, they keep us stagnant, or they lift us up.
Yeah.
And if you're not part of a culture that's lifting you up, both individually and your team, to get to do your best work, then you've got work to do in your culture. And I think there's a lot of that going around. It's why I think so many people are reevaluating right now in terms of where they work. Am I part of an organization that makes me feel they are maximizing my potential as a professional, and I'm part of a team that's committed to doing great things?
Yep.
Yeah.
And how do we lift each other to do that? And culture is everything in that regard.
Yeah. And Jason, you're not just a theorist about this. You are a practitioner because you run a sizable organization of your own. You're very busy. You're global. You're all over the place all the time. I mean, when you look backwards, what do you wish you knew back then that you know now about culture?
Over my years and my practice, and again, yes, thank you, Mike. I refer to our organization as a practice.
Yeah.
Because we are a group and a company of continuous learners.
Yeah.
So as we're engaging with clients on a global basis, we're taking those best practices and what we learn into the next cultural engagement we get to. I'd say the one thing, if I could go back and if I knew it 20 years ago, I'd even be much farther ahead, is that it's not untangible.
Right.
Culture is a tangible, measurable, observable things that gives you all kinds of lead indicators on where your business is going to end up.
Yeah, I love that.
If I would have known that 20 years ago, it probably would have made our lives easy. I would have written a book 20 years ago.
Yeah. What's with the 20? You're not that young. Come on, man. At least 30, if not 40 years ago. I love what you just said. And it's kind of how do you make the invisible visible.
Yes.
Coincidentally, I was on a virtual call yesterday with the Peter Drucker Foundation out of Vienna. And they were asking a question and doing a creation session around what are the new measures of performance that we need to have going forwards? Because the old measures of performance don't reveal how we're really doing. We need new measures of performance to reveal how we're really doing. And I think, Jason, what you're saying is, and we're going to need a lot of cultural measures of performance to know how we're really doing.
Exactly. And they do. They will indicate where you're going to end up. And they also give you a lot of indication, Mike, your discipline, your passion around agility and the agility methodology. If we're really measuring and looking at culture the way we should, we're able to be agile and course correct.
Exactly.
Right. And implement things. I'll give you a prime example. My business, my company, my team, is no different than the clients we work with. We've gone through the same business challenges. Right now, I made it a priority, a cultural priority for myself, that the month of March, I made the commitment to go coast to coast and spend one day with every one of my team members, face to face, rolling sleeves up, talking about projects, talking about the organization, looking at what we need to do more of, what we need to do less of, what we just need to quit doing. Right.
Yeah.
But again, making that connection in person with every one of my team members across the country in a 30-day span is already paying off organizational benefits. I mean, you could easily lose that connection, and the level of energy and excitement right now because of those type of deliberate efforts pay off.
And by the way, everybody, that included Jason and Leo swinging by my home here in Temecula wine country. And we did some work, of course, but then we drank some wine. We went out for dinner. It was a lovely time, wasn't it, Leo?
Always, it was great. And I'll tell you what, I mean, Jason was walking the talk there. And I think a real important piece of this, of course, and I know all of you would agree, is when you think about culture, you don't check off the box, we got this, and move on to other things. It needs the kind of constant attention that you're talking about with it. But I do have one question for you, Mike. It made me think when you're at the Peter Drucker Foundation, if this is just a group of people that eats breakfast 3 times a day. Is that what they do?
Like, oh man,
based on the famous quote, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh boy. So Jason, you just said something I think really insightful, which is it's not intangible, it is tangible. And we said, how do you make the invisible visible? So start taking us there. Give us the speed tour. If people picked up your books, or indeed, we'll talk about the online course in a moment. What are they going to get introduced to in terms of how do you make the invisible visible, the intangible tangible in your business?
Yep. Well, the speed course to this, if in Culture Spark, there's a very simple culture evolution model built into that book, and the book is based around 5 implementable steps, and really the target audience is really anybody that has influence within their organization. They could be a middle management, upper management, even individual contributors. But if they're truly an influencer, right, then they're influencing the organization's culture in ways that they probably never thought of. So it starts with defining. It starts at a strategic intent and really having a clear definition of what you want your culture to be. And then step 2 is diagnosis. I mean, you really need to dig in deep and roll up your sleeves and be vulnerable. The key word there is vulnerability.
Yeah.
To be able to really truly understand what your current culture is. And I guarantee you, every organization out there, they'll probably have some disconnections in what they believe their culture really is, and then what it actually is. And you got to be vulnerable enough to accept that. The third thing is then plan your culture strategy. What are you going to do first? Right? How are you going to communicate it? How are you going to get people on board? Where are you going to create buy-in? The fourth step is setting up metrics. How are we going to measure this? What are we looking at to see we're on the right cultural track? Right. And and then the fifth step of the first book is around sustainment. What
Right.
culture activities, what culture behaviors can we integrate into our organization to sustain that? So the reason I wrote the second book, Culture Ignited, was I was getting asked all the time, okay, well, what are some of the key components of that sustainment? So I wrote about the 5 different disciplines that leaders have, and it's my belief from my studies and my work and my client engagements that culture sustainment starts with that middle management group, right? And to have certain disciplines in that leadership group to continually drive the culture and hold people accountable to that culture is what continues it.
Yeah, and of course, everybody, it's beyond the easiest things to see. We can see that we've got a football table. We can see that. We can see that we've got a break room. We can see that we do a beach barbecue once a year.
That's right.
Culture is so much more than the most obvious things we can see. What do you think, Leo?
Absolutely. Those are just the artifacts, right? As old Edgar Schein used to say back in the 1960s, right? Writing about all this stuff. And every time we engage in these conversations where we do a deep dive into culture, agility, or peer power, how they are woven together to me, I think is rather fascinating. I mean, you look at the 5 areas that Jason just covered. Then you look at the 5 factors of peer innovation, bring that intentionality around having those conversations where people get clarity about what they expect of themselves, what they expect of others, and how this is going to go in terms of fulfilling, the purpose of the organization. And then how it prepares, both those things prepare the company to more agile in the 5 areas that you have. It is 5 to the third power, right? It is absolutely that exponential mathematical equation that I don't think is just convenient. I think that this is kind of how this has come together in a way that delivers that kind of exponential value. So it's really fun to constantly become reacquainted with that.
Yeah.
What is the one advantage?
It is.
There you go.
It is. It's the only advantage. It's
the only advantage.
It's the only thing you've got,
right?
everybody. A peer-powered culture of agility. When you in these times of accelerating disruptive change, pretty much every other competitive advantage that you think you have, you risk waking up one day and realizing it has been disrupted bigger, faster, sooner than your worst nightmare. And all you're really left with, Jason, is this invisible thing that we have to make more visible, because it's all we've got at the end of the day is your culture as turbocharged with peer power and agility. Is that right?
Yeah, Mike, I would say a less performing or a toxic culture rears its heads a lot faster and easier than a high performing culture.
Yeah.
Jason, I got a quick question for you. You are doing this as long as you've had, only 20 years or whatever. I'm sure it's actually been
right.
That. But do you think that culture is invisible largely because too many CEOs, too many leaders don't want to look? Right? They don't. It's really invisible. Is because they don't want to look at it. They don't. They'd rather solve the math problem, if you will. Right? They'd rather get into some of those things as opposed to deal with something that. So to me, that's one of the reasons it's invisible, is because we're looking the other way.
That's you're 100%. We run into it all the time, and sometimes it's not always the C-level people, but that can fall in upper management too. Some people like to put it on boards and hang it on their walls and talk about their values and things like that. But when it comes to operational day to day, they want it. That's all they care about. And the world has changed. The workforce is not allowing that type of behavior. The workforce, the different generations coming into the workforce are forcing organizations to take a look and put culture on top of the priority list. I mean, more so than ever, people are interviewing organizations rather than organizations interviewing people. Yeah. And I think that trend is getting stronger and stronger. Matter of fact, myself, again, I'm talking a lot about my own team today, but we're looking to bring on a brand new instructional designer, a content designer, instructional designer. And we've been in our process for about 30 days now. And I always ask candidates and people we're interviewing and talking to, about questions that they have. And 100% of their time, one of their first two questions they have for me is, let's talk about your organization's culture.
Yeah, exactly. I've got two boys now who are plus or minus 30 years old. So they're both 6 or 8 years into their careers. They've both already worked with 4 organizations each, which means every 2 or 3 years they call me up and they say, Dad, I'm leaving. And I say, why? How come? The leaders here don't get it. I don't like the culture. They don't value peers. They're not agile. He always uses the agile word, right? Because he knows he's playing with me, right? They're not agile. But essentially, he's saying exactly the same thing. I just don't buy that they walk the talk of culture. Yeah. And you know what kids are like these days, right? They quit first and they think about it second because they know they are a hot property and they can walk into another job by this time next week.
What a great proof case for talent retention.
Yeah.
That's one of the things with our clients we work with. How does culture relate to client retention? Matter of fact, that's a metric we monitor and take a look at. It gives us an indicator of how strong our culture is.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great example.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time, isn't it, Jason? Because you have just launched a brand new online course about all of this. Tell us more.
Yeah. IdealOutcomesInc.com. And there's a mini course on Udemy, all based around the concepts and the model and culture spark. And it's check it out. It's well done. We spent a week in the production studio. This course is full of, video interactions, participation activities, question and answers,
case studies.
The case studies. We brought in clients. We did panel discussions. We did best practice sharing. I mean, it's about it's a little over a 3-hour curriculum, but what an awesome opportunity to set a foundation of the concepts and the things you need to be considering if you're truly interested and committed to improving your culture, evolving your culture.
Yeah,
we're jazzed about it, Mike.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes, everybody. There are various different places you can find it. You can find a mini version at a certain place and the full version at the Ideal Outcomes website. So we'll check that out. What do you think, Leo? It's an exciting time for all of that.
No question about it, and of course we've got our own courses that are popping up on the One Advantage as well that people can take advantage of, especially if they become, members of the community. But I think anytime we can look and just take that concentrated time against a specific area where we can really focus and take that deeper dive. Too often, we give these, tips articles, basically, is kind of what I refer to them as. I think they should all come with a warning label, but really, because you will get things and they sound great and all that, but A, you're never going to implement them. B, if you did implement them, you don't understand them well enough where if anything goes just a little bit awry, you're going to go right back to your practices that you are used to and comfortable with. So I think anytime you can dig in, to something like Jason's course in particular, a 3-hour dive into something that'll give you a deeper understanding of something so you can truly, make use of it, I think is huge and obviously really important.
Yeah. If we're not careful, everybody, we're just snacking on little bits of content, that are coming at us left, right, and center via LinkedIn and all kinds of other places, which is fine. But sometimes you got to sit down and eat the real meal on a big topic. And this is certainly that. Well done, Jason. I was there at the shoot and played a small part. But you had clients there. You had your whole team there. It was a professional shoot in a professional studio. It really came together nicely.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was, and what a great experience. You talk about a cultural experience.
So, hey, back to the main topic here. There's that old adage, Jason, that the soft stuff is the hard stuff. What do you want to say to our listeners about that when it comes to culture?
I would say right now in today's world, the most important thing to be focusing on in regards to people and culture is focus on the soft skills. We've lost touch. Focus and invest in the development of your people, around the soft skills, critical thinking, innovation, emotional intelligence, right? Give them the opportunity to bring their best to work every day, and kind of get out of your employees' way and let them perform. But invest in your people and keep developing in those soft skills, and that's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's your culture that helps
Yeah.
people perform, right? You don't have to micromanage your people when your culture is guiding them and aligning them and focusing them and enabling and facilitating them to perform and,
Absolutely.
at their highest level.
And leaders who care about their people will inspire a culture where those people start caring about one another.
Yep.
And that becomes really huge. I can't tell you, and I know all of us have experienced the number of CEOs who, prior to COVID, would begin meetings by, okay, where are we today? What's going on? And, it's all about results and all about, where they stand in a certain, strategic initiative or whatever. And so many now, they don't begin their meetings like that anymore. They begin their meetings with, how is everybody today? How's everybody doing? They don't see people as these instruments of just trying to drive tasks. They actually recognize that there's something larger going on there. And once CEOs, attend to that in the right way and do it from a genuine place, it's really magical when what happens.
Leo, you said the magic word, a genuine place.
Yes.
Right.
In all my research and all our work, there's a couple through lines in everything we do from a cultural standpoint, and a couple of those words that relate to genuine is authenticity, transparency, vulnerability. Right? If we can't demonstrate those soft skills as a leader and walk that talk, our people aren't going to feel safe to be vulnerable, to share ideas. But that genuineness is key to it all.
Exactly. And another word for me that is just added to that list is humility.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said earlier, Leo, about, if we're not careful, CEOs are looking the other way. And often it's their ego that causes them to look the other way, because to look at it, they'd effectively be looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
And have to face up to the idea that they are simultaneously the problem and the solution to their cultural gap.
Correct.
And if there's a cultural gap, look in the mirror, CEO, executive manager, that's on you. And are you showing up with that genuine, authentic, transparent leadership presence that you need to be to invite the culture that you want? You got to look at it. You got to look at it in the eyes and face up to it. What do you think, Jason?
You're perfect. That is some of the best advice that any leader in an organization can hear.
And one of the most powerful ways that Leo is promoting that around the country and the world is no better place than being in a peer group, Leo, to have that mirror held up to yourself.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was in yesterday, brand new group coming together, and actually they have bonded quite quickly and remarkably. But it's because each of them made an effort to do it, not just showing up to the meeting once a month, but really taking time, meeting each other for lunch, having Zoom calls, doing things to connect everyone, to get everyone to know not just what they do, but who they are, and connecting on that level. And when that happens, they can start really doing some great things for one another. And that's how they're going to learn and grow so much more quickly.
Yeah. Leo, any other final words for our listeners before we sign off here?
No, just, I will tell you, and I've, mentioned this before, that, Jason walks the talk on this. It's really great to read his books is one thing and have people espouse it, but to watch how he leads his own team. It's just really evident that, he, believes in what he says and understands the incredible value of it. And I know everyone at Ideal Outcomes feels the same way. And it's just been a real pleasure to get to see that up close.
And if you get a chance to drink a glass of wine with Jason and eat a dinner, take it, everybody, because it only gets better. And Jason, final few words.
Oh, guys, I again, thank you. My final few words is always based around a challenge, and the challenge is to take a moment uninterrupted take a step back and determine if you're really, really committed to culture or not. Because if you go down this culture journey, you have to be all in. It's not a halfway in and halfway out type situation. If you're truly want to see some business improvement, get committed to focusing on your culture, and find out what the results will be. It could be life changing.
Awesome. In real estate, everybody, we say location, location, location. In our work, we say peer power, we say culture, we say agility. That is the one and only competitive advantage you have. So check out the show notes, everybody, for the links to that online course. And of course, come into the One Advantage community where you'll be able to find coupon codes to get you over to those courses as well. We look forward to seeing you there, and we look forward to having you here for the next episode. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Leo. Goodbye, everybody.
This is great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the One Advantage podcast. If you liked this episode, please consider helping us by rating us wherever you listen, spreading the word, having us as a guest on your podcast or webinar, and mentioning us in social media. Find us at the One Advantage podcast, where you can get more information about us and this episode. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to more great episodes to come.